Hi, it's Dre Griggs of Obsidian Wisdom. Today, I answer the question, when do I stop saving for retirement? I find this to be such an interesting question because there are so many ways we can go with this. And if you'll allow me, we can have a conversation about it and we can see what makes the most sense for each of us. The first thing I would ask is what is retirement, right? Like what is the idea of retirement, whether we should even consider it something that we should stop at some point investing towards. And retirement, or at least the way I often tell people, the word retire means to withdraw, right? The word retire, it's a French word, it means to withdraw. So if I'm going to withdraw, what am I withdrawing from? And I would say we're withdrawing from the rat race. I would say that we're withdrawing from this idea of trading my time for money, that I'm going to start spending my money to purchase back my time. And for most of us, the idea of having all of our time, sometimes we're even confused what to do with it. And I know lots of people who are like, I think I'm just going to go back to work because I'm sort of bored with this whole retirement thing. And we'll talk about the financial aspects of it, which is just, hey, do I have enough money? Am I good? Like, can I go ahead and stop investing towards my retirement? And we'll also talk about the mindset half of it, which is what am I going to do with my time and my money? Because you're probably still making the money, especially if you're working. And so for us to answer that question together, we really have to say, what am I going to do with the money instead? I'm someone who believes investing towards your retirement, purchasing all of your time is a great investment, probably one of the best investments that you could make. And when you look at the way that the system is designed, that I will sometimes refer to the system as your stability straitjacket. And they'll put the straitjacket around you and tell you, hey, this is your stability, this is your security. Don't you feel all warm and cozy? But you and I know that the straitjacket restricts our individuality. It takes away our freedom in many ways. And I don't know if I want that much stability and security in my life at the expense of my freedom. In fact, one of our forefathers is famous for saying, if you're willing to trade your freedom for security, that you deserve neither and will lose both. Having seen people accomplish that goal of purchasing their freedom, knowing that their time is theirs and they could spend it with whoever doing whatever that they want, I just can't really express how important it ultimately ends up being for each of us. And so that's why we always start with, okay, well, what do we want to do with our money instead? Now, some people will say, well, the first thing you have to do is see whether you have enough money for retirement. And while I think that is a fair place to start, I think it makes more sense to start with what do we want to do instead? Because if you're saying, you know what, Dre, I feel a little anxious, I'm a little uncomfortable, I don't have any cash or liquidity, and I really just want to have an emergency fund. I just want to be comfortable knowing that I have a certain amount of money set aside for a rainy day or some sort of emergency that is easy for me to access. And I'll put a link to another video where I discuss some of the ways that we can utilize our money without having an emergency fund. And if it's something that keeps you up at night, then we need to put a plan that makes sense for you, right? You're the driver, it's your plan. I simply help you put it together. So if having peace of mind means that you'll feel better cutting back on your retirement investments, but you just want to put some money aside for liquidity, and it's not something that you feel comfortable doing both of them, well, in that case, it probably makes sense to say, all right, well, let's stop investing for your retirement. And I'll put a link to another video where I talk about the 5 most common withdrawal strategies. And one of them is the bucket strategy. And the way the 3 buckets work is your first bucket would be your 0 to 12 months, sometimes 0 to 24 months, where that money is relatively liquid because I need to be able to access it within 2 years. Your middle bucket is normally going to be that 3 to 5 year range. So I may be in some short term bonds where I'm able to get some sort of return. I do have a little bit more time in my investments, but that's going to be your midterm range. You will use that bucket to refill your 12-month to 24-month bucket whenever it starts to deplete. This gives you a little bit of a window room, a little bit of runway in case the stock market or wherever the money is invested isn't necessarily performing very well at any particular point in time. Now you have at least 2 years to wait for the market to recover. And then you can take the money out of your midterm bucket, which is your 3 to 5 year bucket. And then you could replenish that 12 to 24 month bucket, which is your short term investments. And then the third bucket is going to be your more aggressive investments. That's going to be the money that you don't plan on touching close to 10 years. And because you have that aggressive bucket, you're then more comfortable leaving that smaller bucket with your 12 to 24 months of liquid assets where it doesn't really have much of a return. It's probably in money market accounts, very small investments where you can access it relatively quickly. But if you are someone who is contemplating whether you should stop investing for your retirement, that type of withdrawal strategy would give you the ability to have your cake and eat it too. You can still be investing towards your retirement while having 12 to 24 months of liquid assets available. Other people might say, well, Dre, I paid off all of my debt and I don't plan on increasing my overall expenses. So I feel like I've already accomplished my goal. On the other end, some will say, well, Dre, I still have a decent amount of debt, And I would love to be able to pay that debt off. So it's just one less thing I have to worry about when I retire. And I would say both are very fair circumstances as well. If you paid off your debt and lowered your overall cost of living, and if you're very confident that you're going to stay in your house and you have gotten rid of all of your debt, then if we put a retirement plan together that is designed on you having a certain amount of expenses in retirement, and you've already cut off a significant amount of your expenses, well, then you may say, well, Dre, I'm good. And I would say, sure, like we could be good, but I would still ask, what are we going to do with the money? And so for me, if someone was saying, look, I got rid of my debt and I think it'd be great for me to start taking some trips now. While I'm still working, I have a lot of PTO saved up. I don't take many days off. So I'm just thinking I'll take maybe a weekend or a week off each month. And it's almost like I'm retired while still working. Now I would say, well, that's a great idea because we got rid of the debt. And now we can even start chipping off on some of our goals and dreams for retirement while we still have an active income. And that might ultimately mean that you need even less money in retirement because now you're checking off a bunch of your goals, you're traveling, you're seeing all these amazing places, you're doing all these cool things. So I would say, well, that sounds great. We have a much better alternative than investing for retirement by getting rid of the debt now and taking the trips and accomplishing some of the goals now while I'm still working. I think that's a great idea. On the other end, if you have a significant amount of debt and you just want to get rid of that debt, again, we're talking about peace of mind where I just don't like having debt, Dre. I just don't want to be bothered by this. I don't want to have to keep track of the monthly payments. I don't want to have the statements mailed to me. I just want to be done with the cards. I don't want to deal with this debt at all. Then we would say, okay, if that's how you feel, let's see if we can put a plan together where instead of us investing 20 to 40% towards your retirement and maybe 10% towards your debt, maybe we can flip it and we can invest 20 to 40% towards your debt. And then we can still maintain some investments towards your retirement. When you look at the name of the company, Obsidian Wisdom, and I've told you guys that wisdom means insight. It's the idea that as we get older, if we could have gone back in time and redid everything, that we would win the game like we had all the cheat codes. Because we sort of do, right? That's what wisdom is. Because wisdom can help you build your wealth, maintain your health, and even have an incredible lifestyle in retirement. And because each of us is so unique, fulfillment and success is measured differently for each of us. And so, if fulfillment for you means that you have no debt when you retire, that's something that would help you feel fantastic, then we could put a plan together to get rid of the debt. I think that's perfectly fine. In fact, if you just go purely based on the numbers, if you have debt that outpaces whatever the return is, it's almost like you're giving yourself that return. For example, if you have a credit card that's at 29% and then your investments were going to get you 10%, well, by paying off the debt, you have gotten yourself a 29% return on your money because you now get to keep that 29% interest. So it still works towards your retirement. And that leads pretty nicely into the next one, which is I've already accomplished all of my retirement goals, whatever funding I needed to be able to take the trips, to be able to pay off my debt, to be able to give back to my family, whatever it was that you said you wanted to do in retirement, we have already checked off all the boxes. Then sure, if you're someone that's like, look, Dre, I don't want to have to put any more money in retirement because I don't feel like working anymore. When we look at the plan, you have at least an 80% probability of success, then I would say, hey, look, we're good. If you're tired of working, then we can go ahead and retire. And I'll even say, and I'll put a link to another video where some people will retire for, let's say, 5 years. And then they take 5 years off and they kind of do a few things with the plan of going back to work. Now, that is a very unique situation. And for most people, there's two concerns that they have. One is they don't think they're going to be very healthy and able to do these things when they retire later on in life. So they want to be able to take these trips, to do these adventures while they're healthy. And they'll take a 1 to 5 year sabbatical and they'll enjoy their retirement life. They'll take the trips, they'll visit the places, they'll do as much as they possibly can in this amount of time, knowing that they ultimately will go back into the workforce. Now, they may not go back exactly at the same position that they had, the same amount of responsibilities and stress that they had, but maybe they'll find a job that just pays a decent amount and has good health care. There are so many ways that we can say, all right, I'm tired of investing for my retirement, but I always say, well, what do we want to do with the money instead? Because if we're still accomplishing your goals, I say, hey, let's go for it, right? Because that ultimately is what all of us want to do. Whatever fulfillment looks like for you, let's put a plan together to make sure that is a reality that you can fulfill. I literally want you to enrich your peace of mind by having a regret-free retirement where whatever the goals are, we put a plan together, we accomplish the goals, you feel really good about it. Now, it's important to note that we do need to take inflation into consideration. There's sometimes that we'll sit there and we'll count the numbers out and we'll say, okay, I have enough money to live off of $100,000 a year and I'm going to go ahead and retire. Okay, cool. But the reality is the rule of 17 is just a very fancy way of saying that if inflation is 3% every year, roughly every 17 to 20 years, your purchasing power cuts in half, which is a very fancy way of saying whatever costs you $1 today will cost you $2 in 17 years. And because most of us are going to be retired for at least 20 years, that means we're at least going to have to deal with that one time where our purchasing power is literally cut in half. And I often give the same examples where my dad talks about when he was a kid and he'll be able to go to the corner store and he could buy a pack of cookies and a soda for a nickel. And I was reading something the other day where the United States was debating even making coins because there's literally nothing you could buy with coins because of inflation. If you look at the Dollar Tree, they had to raise their prices by 25% to $1.25 because it's very hard to be able to get things for a dollar because of the way inflation is. If you look at gasoline prices, if you were someone who retired in the late 90s, then you may have paid a dollar and some change for gas. And if you were dealing with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and different things, the gas would went up to $4, $5, $6 a gallon. And now it's somewhere around $3 to $4, at least in Florida. But you're still seeing that that's a 300% increase for what the price of gas was just 20 years ago. And so inflation tends to be that quiet retirement killer where we feel good about the number that we have. And that's true for pensions. And if your pension doesn't go up where it has a COLA, cost of living adjustment attached to it, then you would have to be able to adjust for that with your other investments. And the way I tend to describe inflation is it's sort of like a people's tax where the government spends too much money. And because the government is spending so much, I think we're at $34 trillion in debt right now. Ultimately, that means that each of our dollars is worth less. And so that is a people's tax. Instead of the government just deciding where it thinks we should invest the money, where we should cut the investments, it just says we're going to fund everything. And indirectly, that means that we're all suffering as a result because our dollar is worth much less, which is why I often tell people, regardless of whether you want to invest specifically for your retirement, I do think investing your money is much better than just sitting it in a bank account getting 0.001%. You guys know me. I'm someone who believes that money is meant to make more money. And then the money that my money makes, that's the money I spend. That's how you're able to escape the system. That's how you're able to take off the stability straitjacket. By having your money make money and then you spend that money, you have freed yourself from the system, which ultimately means that if I am actively working for my money, then that means that I should be investing this money somewhere because I haven't been able to completely free myself. Now, you may be someone that says, look, Dre, I love my job. I love the people, the relationship. I would do what I would do for free. I was like, God bless you. Then keep working and getting paid for it. Right? There's no reason to do it for free. And then you take the money and you invest it and you can spend it and do whatever you want with it. But I'm just simply saying that that's my philosophy, that I'm most comfortable when I can spend the money that makes the money because I still have the core investments. Think of it like playing Monopoly where you get the $200 every time you pass go. That would be like your salary, right? That would be like the income that we receive from actively working, actively going around the field versus when someone lands on your property and they pay you, it's like you didn't do anything. It's very passive. And as long as you maintain that property, then you always have the opportunity to get some sort of rental income. And that money tends to grow much quicker. It tends to give you an advantage in the game. And the more that you're able to have your money make for you by investing it in assets that produce more money, buying properties and houses and hotels, that gives you even more money to continue investing, to buy more properties, more houses, and more hotels. Now, it is just a game, but it is one of my favorite games. If you talk to anyone in my family, they will tell you I love Monopoly. If you talk to my kids, they tell you I love Monopoly. I have one of those limited edition Monopoly boards with maybe like 50 pieces that you can play with. I mean, it's fabulous, right? Like I love Monopoly because it's aligned with my philosophy about money. In the same way in Monopoly, if you have a medical expense or you have the luxury tax or any of that, that's considered a negative in the game because you're losing your money and you're not given the opportunity to invest the money for a return. Which is why for me personally, I don't know if I would ever stop investing for my retirement. I love buying my time back. And maybe once I finish buying all of my time back, maybe I could buy my wife's time. Maybe when I finish buying her time, I could buy my kids' time. Maybe I could buy my grandkids' time. That's the way I look at it. That's what excites me is every time I'm able to invest money, to make more money, to buy more time and more freedom, that I'm freeing someone that I love. Which is why the system tells you success is measured by how big your wedding is, how nice your car is, how big your home is, and how nice your clothes are. All the while, the not so known secret to wealth is actually your ability to purchase all of your time back, which we call retirement. I think retirement is the best way to invest your money. And when you're done retiring yourself, go ahead and retire the family. First of all, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate your time. I do not take it for granted. If you found value in this video, go ahead and like and subscribe so you can continue receiving valuable insights on how to create your own wealthy retirement system so that you can worry less and live more. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.